The stage lights flicker as a frail Filipino grandfather, holding a weathered guitar, slowly walks onto the AGT stage with his 10-year-old grandson beside him. Their hands are clasped, trembling but full of love. The audience whispers. Simon Cowell raises an eyebrow. When Simon asks, "What made you come all the way here?" the grandfather smiles softly, his voice breaking. "Because this might be the last time I sing, and I wanted to share it with him." The crowd falls silent. The little boy looks up at his Lolo with teary eyes and whispers, "Let's make it count, Grandpa." In a quiet fishing village in the Philippines, life moved with the rhythm of the waves and the melody of the wind. It was a place where dreams were often small, yet hearts were vast. Among the coconut trees and bamboo houses lived a gentle old man named Lolo Ben, whose voice once filled the town's tiny church. Years ago, he had been a local musician, never famous, but known for his songs that made people feel seen. His most precious audience, however, was a 10-year-old boy with bright eyes and a smile that could light up even the stormiest evening. His grandson, Mateo. Every night after the world had gone quiet, Lolo Ben would sit on their wooden porch, strumming his weathered guitar, its strings slightly rusty, its body full of stories. Mateo would sit cross-legged in front of him, eyes wide, soaking in every chord, every lyric, every lesson. "Lolo," Mateo once asked, "why do you still sing if nobody listens anymore?" The old man smiled, brushing his fingers across the strings. "Because, Anak, sometimes the world listens in silence. You never sing for applause. You sing for the soul." That night, fireflies danced around them as he sang an old Filipino lullaby, Sa Ugoy ng Duyan, the same song he once sang to Mateo's mother when she was a child. His voice trembled with age, but it carried something no microphone could capture: love. Mateo's mother had passed away when he was just 3. Since then, the boy had been Lolo Ben's entire world. Together, they found ways to keep going, selling coconuts, fixing fishing nets, and on Sundays, performing small songs for neighbors who always tipped them with smiles instead of coins. One afternoon, while cleaning, Mateo stumbled upon his grandfather's old phone. The cracked screen played a YouTube clip, an America's Got Talent performance. He watched, mesmerized, as a singer earned the golden buzzer, confetti raining down like stardust. His eyes widened with wonder. "Lolo," he said breathlessly, "what if we sang there one day?" The old man chuckled softly, adjusting his glasses. "Ay, Anak, that's too far, too big. Those dreams are for others." Mateo smiled, hugging his grandfather's arm. "Then let's dream small, but together." For a moment, silence filled the room, followed by a soft chuckle and the gentle hum of a guitar. Lolo Ben began to play again, slower this time, more thoughtful. The music wrapped around them like a warm blanket. That night, while Mateo slept, the old man looked at the glowing moon outside and whispered, "Maybe it's time the world hears our song, before my voice fades away." He closed his eyes and imagined that faraway stage. Not for fame, not for money, but to give his grandson something priceless, a memory of courage, of love, and of music that would outlive them both. And with that dream, the first note of their unforgettable journey had begun. The sun was just rising when the small fishing village woke to something unusual: excitement. For the first time in years, Lolo Ben wasn't heading to the docks with his worn fishing net. Instead, he and Mateo stood by a tricycle packed with a single suitcase, a guitar wrapped in cloth, and 2 hearts full of trembling hope. Their neighbors gathered around, clapping and cheering them on. "Make the Philippines proud, Lolo," one man shouted. "Sing your heart out, Mateo," a woman added, handing the boy a small packet of rice cakes for the trip. It wasn't just a journey across the ocean, it was a journey across generations. Lolo Ben had never left the country before. His passport photo looked unsure, but his eyes carried the determination of a man who wanted to give his grandson one last great adventure. The flight to Los Angeles felt like magic to Mateo. The city lights below looked like constellations fallen to earth. But to Lolo Ben, the noise, the rush, the crowds, it was overwhelming. Still, he never let it show. He smiled through the jet lag, held Mateo's hand tightly, and whispered, "Remember, Anak, no matter how big the stage, just sing like it's our porch back home." At the AGT venue, everything felt unreal. Contestants practiced in corners, makeup artists rushed by, cameras whirred, lights flickered. Mateo's excitement sparkled, but Lolo's hands trembled slightly as he tuned his guitar. He hadn't performed for a real audience in decades. Then something unexpected happened. A young man, another contestant, noticed Lolo's shaking hands. Without a word, he walked over, knelt, and said, "Sir, may I help you tune it?" His accent was American, but his kindness was universal. In that small moment, Lolo's nervousness melted. "Thank you, hijo," he whispered. "You remind me of my grandson." Backstage, they watched the other acts, dancers, magicians, singers, and the nervous energy grew. When the producer called, "Next up, contestant 1479, Ben and Mateo from the Philippines," Lolo felt his heart skip a beat. Mateo squeezed his hand and said softly, "Lolo, remember what Mama used to say?" "What's that, a knock?" "When you sing with love, even angels stop to listen." Lolo's eyes glistened. He nodded slowly, exhaling deeply. "Then let's make them listen." As they stepped toward the blinding stage lights, the world seemed to slow. The vast AGT stage stretched before them like a dream made real. Simon Cowell, Sofia Vergara, Heidi Klum, and Howie Mandel sat waiting, pens ready, eyes curious. Mateo held the mic. Lolo adjusted his guitar. The audience quieted. You could hear a pin drop. Then the first chord echoed. Soft, soulful, familiar. The same song that once drifted through their bamboo porch in the Philippines was now echoing through a world stage. And though the lights were blinding and the crowd massive, for Lolo Ben, it still felt like home. The stage lights dimmed, and the massive audience fell into an expectant hush. For a brief moment, the world seemed to pause, and all that existed was a boy, a grandfather, and a single trembling note waiting to be born. Mateo took a small breath, glancing up at his Lolo. Their eyes met, a silent promise between two souls bound by love and music. Then, with a gentle strum of the guitar, the melody began. It was Sa Ugoy ng Duyan, a lullaby about a mother's embrace, a song that carried the weight of longing, memory, and tenderness. But tonight, it wasn't just a song about mothers. It was about every person who ever loved and lost, who ever held on through pain. Lolo Ben's fingers, aged and shaking, danced across the strings. His voice, though weathered, carried a fragile strength, a voice that had sung through storms, hunger, and heartbreak. Mateo followed, his young tone pure and trembling with emotion. The harmony of youth and age blended like sunlight breaking through clouds. At first, the judges listened politely. Then something shifted. Simon leaned forward. His eyes softened, a rare sight. Sophia's hand moved to her heart. The audience, hundreds of strangers, fell utterly silent, not out of courtesy but reverence. Every note felt alive. Every lyric seemed to reach beyond the stage and into the hearts of those watching. It was as if their song carried invisible hands that touched every listener, whispering, "You're not alone." Halfway through, Lolo's voice cracked. The emotion was too heavy. Memories of his daughter, the struggles he had endured. Mateo noticed instantly. Without missing a beat, he reached out, gently placing his small hand on his grandfather's shoulder. That single gesture changed everything. The old man looked at him and smiled through tears. Together, they continued, their voices trembling but unstoppable. It wasn't perfect. The timing slipped. A chord missed. But none of it mattered. It was real. It was human. When they reached the final note, their voices joined in one long, aching harmony that seemed to float in the air forever, like a prayer. Silence followed, a silence so thick it felt sacred. Then, a sound like thunder. The audience rose to their feet. A standing ovation. People clapped, cried, shouted, and cheered. Simon Cowell, visibly moved, took off his glasses and wiped his eyes. something he rarely did. He leaned toward his mic and said softly, "That was pure heart. I've heard thousands of songs, but tonight I felt something I can't explain." Mateo and Lolo stood frozen, hands clasped, tears streaming down their faces, and just when the applause reached its peak, Simon smiled, looked at the golden buzzer, and slammed it. Confetti exploded from above, raining down like blessings. Lolo Ben fell to his knees, overcome with emotion, while Mateo threw his arms around him, whispering through tears, "We did it, Lolo. We did it." For that moment, they weren't just contestants. They were a message to the world. Love doesn't age. Music doesn't fade. And kindness, true kindness, always finds a way to be heard. The golden confetti still floated in the air like tiny pieces of heaven. The crowd roared in disbelief, their cheers echoing through the vast AGT theater. Cameras zoomed in on Simon Cowell, the man known for his harsh critiques. Now standing, smiling with tears glistening in his eyes, Lolo Ben stood frozen, his calloused hands trembling as the gold rained down. Mateo, tears streaming down his cheeks, clung to his grandfather's arm, his small voice barely audible over the noise. "Lolo, is this real?" The old man's lips quivered into a smile, part disbelief, part gratitude. "It's real, Anak. This is for your mama." The audience's cheers grew louder, and in that moment the lights seemed to fade into gold. But behind the glitter, there was something deeper, a connection. The world wasn't just watching a performance. They were witnessing love in its purest form. Simon stepped forward, microphone in hand, his voice unusually soft. "You know, I've seen hundreds of acts, but sometimes something happens on this stage that reminds us what this show is really about." He paused, his voice cracking slightly as he continued. "It's not about fame or perfection. It's about moments that make us feel human again. You too just gave us that." The audience erupted once more, and even the other judges were wiping their tears. Sophia smiled through her emotion, saying, "You brought the soul of the Philippines to this stage tonight." Howie added, "This was more than music. It was love. It was legacy." Heidi leaned closer to her mic. "You reminded us all how powerful family is." Mateo, overwhelmed, covered his mouth with both hands, his small frame shaking with joy. Lolo Ben gently placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered, "Anak, remember this. It's not about the golden buzzer. It's about the golden heart." Those words pierced through the noise. Even Simon nodded quietly, clearly moved. A production assistant brought the pair to the center of the stage for a photo. Lolo held his guitar close, the same old instrument that had seen decades of sunsets and tears, and whispered to it like an old friend. "You made it here too." As they turned to wave at the audience, people from the crowd shouted words in Tagalog. "Mabuhay kayo!" Proud to be Filipino. The entire theater felt like one family. Backstage, as the confetti still clung to their hair, Mateo looked up at his Lolo and said, "Lolo, do you think Mama saw us?" The old man looked up toward the ceiling, eyes glistening under the golden dust. "Oh, Anak, I think she didn't just see us. I think she sang along." Mateo smiled, and for the first time, Lolo allowed himself to cry freely, not out of pain, but from the overwhelming beauty of dreams fulfilled. And as the crowd's cheers echoed behind them, the two walked off the stage, hand in hand, hearts full, knowing they had shared something eternal with the world. A song born from love, carried by hope and remembered by kindness. Days after their unforgettable golden buzzer moment, the world couldn't stop talking about them. Clips of Lolo Ben and Mateo's performance flooded social media. Millions of views, thousands of comments in every language. People called them the heart of AGT, the Filipino duo who made the world cry. But for the two of them, it wasn't about fame. It was about something much deeper. Inside a quiet hotel room in Los Angeles, far from the cameras and crowds, Lolo Ben sat by the window, his guitar resting on his knees. The morning sun poured in softly, painting the walls gold. just like the confetti that had fallen days earlier. Mateo sat beside him, scrolling through comments on his phone. "Lolo," he said softly. "Look. People from America, Japan, Brazil. They're all saying our song reminded them of home. Some said it made them call their parents again." The old man smiled faintly, his eyes misting. "Then our music did its job, Anak. It helped someone remember love." He plucked a few gentle notes on the guitar, the same familiar melody that started it all. For a moment, both were silent, listening. The sound wasn't grand or perfect. It was simple, human, the kind that filled spaces with warmth. Later that day, a producer came by with an invitation. "We want to bring you both back for the finals," she said. "The world needs more of what you two have." Mateo gasped with joy, but Lolo simply placed a hand over his heart. "Thank you," he said, "but I think we've already won, in the only way that matters." He wasn't being humble. He was being grateful. For him, stepping onto that stage wasn't about trophies. It was about passing on something priceless, the courage to dream, no matter the years, and the reminder that love can echo louder than applause. Before flying home, they visited a small park near the theater. Street performers played guitars and sang in different languages. Mateo watched, fascinated. Lolo leaned close and whispered, "Music is the language of kindness, Anak. No matter where you go, people will understand it." As they sat on a bench, an elderly woman approached and said through tears, "Your song made me forgive my son." "Thank you." Lolo nodded softly, unable to speak. When she walked away, he turned to Mateo and said, "See, that's why we sang. Not for the prize, but for hearts like hers." When they finally boarded their flight back to the Philippines, the cabin lights dimmed. Mateo leaned his head on Lolo's shoulder and whispered, "Lolo, when I grow up, I'll keep singing our songs." The old man smiled gently. "Then I'll keep listening, even from the stars." As their plane lifted into the clouds, the world below still hummed with their melody, a song that reminded millions that kindness, love, and family can turn even the simplest tune into a miracle. And for those who heard their story, one thing was certain: they would never listen to music the same way again.